Welcome back. We are taking a look at the Magic 2013 DLC deck pack number 2, which is out on, I think on PlayStation 3. It'll be out on Tuesday, and I don't know exactly what time, but for Xbox and for Steam PC, that it's going to be out on Wednesday. Don't know why they decided that, but apparently that's how it's going to go. If you're playing Magic 2013 on your iPad, then it's going to be out on the 6th. That's what I'm told, at least. Anyways, in the upcoming deck pack, and you'll notice, by the way, that I'm, as usual, back in Cockatrice, because it's so easy for me to create the decks and organize them and so on. So that's why I choose to use this program. Very easy. Anyways, yeah, we're going to see the following two decks. We're going to see the Gruul deck, and we're going to see the Orjov deck. The Gruul deck is the one that we're taking a look at right now, and it deals with the deck, by the way, is called Berserker Rage, and it pretty much it's a pretty fitting description. This iteration of a Gruul deck is all about huge creatures, all about big creatures for cheap. Sometimes there's a catch, sometimes there's barely a catch. You're just gonna get those huge creatures which are fucking amazing, something which Pack Instinct is gonna drool at in its sleep. And you're gonna get a lot of combat trick buffers, kind of like this is a Pack Instinct mixed with giant growth on steroid kind of deck. So at the same time, it's a bit of a Timmy deck, but it's also kind of interesting. I should hate this deck, and I kind of do, but it's difficult for me to hate it all the way, because it has so many really awesome creatures in it. I'm probably gonna hate playing against it though. Anyways, let's take a look at it. First, the main deck. As you'll see, there's 39 cards in the main deck, including the 4 Terramorphic Expanse. I don't know why they didn't choose Evolving Wilds, because while this occurs, or this takes place on Ravnica, which is, as I've said before, Ecumenopolis, a planet covered in city, basically, the Gruul clan pretty much deals with everything that has to do with preserving nature, and everything natural in a sense, whereas the other clans that has to do with nature, for example, Simic, are the research scientists that try to pump up nature in a sense. We have the Isid, deals with natural forces, but kind of experiments with them and make these crazy, explosive, wild, volatile experiments. And there's the Celestia, which is more about putting emphasis on group dynamics and on being part of a collective, and then you have Golgari, which is also a nature-oriented, in a sense, a nature-oriented guild, which more it deals a little bit more with kind of manipulating the life cycles, manipulating the life and death cycles, and so on. But Gruul is all about life and vitality, and keeping it natural and raw, and yeah, all that brute strength insanity, which is manifested in the creatures that they harbor, their enchantments and instants, their magic, just all together. So I would have put Evolving Wilds in there. I've said so many things about like these fetch lands. So basically, yeah. I would have put Evolving Wilds in there, but that's enough of my ranting about these or these fetch lands for now. Anyways, we start off with an artifact which is pretty interesting. The Mage Slayer. It's a 3-cost and it's a dual-colored artifact. Normally artifacts tend to be non-colored or uncolored, whatever you want to call it. But it's a 3-cost, 1 green, 1 red, 1 colorless, and it costs 3 to equip. And whenever this creature, whenever the equipped creature attacks, it deals an amount of damage equal to its power to the defending player. So, by the way, I got this info from Wingspan TT, Top Tier Tactics, and from the forums at the Wizards community. So yeah, that to get that out of the way, in Wings video he called this essentially a double strike card, and that's partly true. Sometimes you will get some, especially if your creature gets in there. But if your creature doesn't get in there, it's still a nice way to throw some damage at your opponent's face. Even, for example, if you're playing against Crosswinds, and he has those fog banks down. Doesn't matter, you're still going to get in there for damage, so it becomes vital for him to deal with your creatures very quickly. Let's take a look at the creatures. A lot of them will have, or a handful of them will have this text. Attacks each turn if able. This is a 4/4 for 5, and you can't use it as a blocker, basically, unless there's some kind of weird effect that hinders it from attacking, or if there's a summoning sickness. But from that turn onwards, you're basically gonna have to attack. And I guess this is the trade in a sense with some of the greater creatures, and then you have these like mindless creatures that are not good for strategic purposes, but which are good for just smashing in there. But aside from that, it's pretty unspectacular. 4/4 for 5. Bloodrock Cyclops is a 3-cost 3/3, so you see the mana efficiency or the cheapness is starting to unfold a little bit. And it also attacks each turn if able, but you'll notice even though it's a 3/3 and the Berserkers are 4/4, it's a 3-cost while the Berserkers are 5-cost. So yeah, a little bit better in my opinion. Then you have Borborygmos, which is the guild leader, at least at the point in time where Guild Pack took place. Let me see. These are not. I don't think these are Ravnica related cards. There's a lot of non-Ravnica related cards in both decks in this deck pack, but I think that's pretty symptomatic for all the decks that we've seen. Anyways, it's a 7-cost. Borborygmos is a 7-cost legendary creature with trample, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, remember it has trample, you put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Not each creature that attacks, but each creature you control. It's 6/7, by the way. Pretty significant in my opinion. Very intimidating guy to have down. Centaur Courser is a classic. It's been in the past few iterations of Magic 2013. This one is no exception. I think it is in the Pack Instinct deck. Not entirely sure. At least it was in I think decks both in Duels of the Planeswalkers and 2012. Anyways, it's a 3/3 for 3, fairly cheap. Nothing wrong with that card. Essence Warden. Seems a little bit out of place in this deck. It reminds me of, I think, wasn't it called the Fury of the... No, Trinity of Elements, I think, was the tricolored deck, green, blue, red from 2012. And it used... I think it used the life gaining ability a little bit better. Maybe it didn't. Maybe you just had a lot of Essence Warden at your disposal. But it's a 1/1 for 1, which gains your life every time a creature comes into play. And yeah, it's decent if you want to gain life, especially because there's so many creatures. You'll see out of the 39 cards in the main deck, you have 26 of them being creatures. So yeah. In a sense, it's useful, but I don't understand why just 1. Then we have 3 Gruul Guildmages, which is one of the one of the better guild mages in my opinion. It's a 2-cost 2/2 and for 4, which is a little expensive, but its ability is nice. You can sacrifice a land and throw 2 damage at target player. Also for 4, but with a green mana instead of a red, target creature gains +2/+2 until end of turn. Not as good as the Celestia Guildmage ability, where you basically just pump your entire side by +1/+1, but still, it's pretty good. It's a nice combat trick, and it'll leave your opponent thinking very carefully about which blocks and which attacks he's going to make, because you have the when you have the open mana for it. Gruul Scrapper is a 4-cost 3/2. Nothing spectacular about that. When it comes into play, if a red mana was spent to play Gruul Scrapper, it gains haste until the end of turn. It's kind of like a Steam Core Weird in a sense, with this kind of ability. Anyways, pretty unspectacular. I think for 4, I would prefer if it just had haste to begin with, but most of the time it's gonna have haste, simply because of you playing dual colored. So yeah, and it's costing 4, so it's very unlikely that you're gonna cast it for 4 green. Sacred Wolf, 3-cost 3/1 hexproof. We know it from, I think we know it from a couple of decks. No, at least we know it from Auramancer from last year, which was a pain in the neck because of how difficult it was to deal with once you started casting enchantments on it. Shivan Wurm is an interesting card. It's a 7/7 for 5. You see that mana that cheapness come into play. It has trample, and when it comes into play, you must return a red or green creature you control to your hand. Basically, that's it's a nice effect. You get to take one of your smaller creatures, and for 5 you get a 7/7 trample creature. That's pretty interesting and pretty insane, and in the same stretch. But yeah, aside from that, I don't know. It's just all about getting huge creatures for cheap, and as you'll see, and as far as I can see, there's no ramp cards in this deck, so I don't know. Like I mean, Pack Instinct had a lot of ramp. I think Ancient Wilds had a lot of card ramp that and some mana ramp. And I think the Celestia deck had not so much. The Golgari deck had a lot. So it's kind of weird to me that this deck doesn't get any kind of ramp cards or any kind of mana. It only has the mana efficiency going for it, kind of. Here's a 5/5 vanilla for 5. It's just a big creature, that's all. Then you have the Tattermunge Maniac. It's a 1-cost 2/1, and it attacks each turn if able. This flips it around. See, this is a little bit more expensive than it has to be when it has this caveat of a text. And this creature is a little cheap because it's 3/3 for 3. But then you have the Tattermunge Maniac, which is 2/1. It's a 2/1 for 1. That's cheap. You can drop this very early, and you could drop it first turn and second turn swing in there with a 2/1. It's pretty good. Then you have the Tattermunge Witch, and you have 2 of them as well. It's a 2-cost 2/1, and for 2, one green, 1 red. Each block creature gains +1/+0 and gains trample until end of turn. So, and you can pump this multiple times, by the way. So this is another way of pumping your side and making it very, very difficult for your opponent to deal with your creatures. Wickerbough, yeah, I don't know. Wickerbough Elder is a 4-cost 4/4. But it comes into play as a 3/3 because it comes into play with a -1/-1 counter on it. If you pay 1 green mana, you can remove this counter and destroy target artifact or enchantment. That's pretty interesting. So essentially it's a 3/3, and when you kill off an artifact or destroy an artifact or an enchantment, it becomes bigger. So that's a nice way of dealing with It's a nice way of dealing with, for example, Peacekeepers removal cards, all its Oblivion Rings and Journeys to Nowhere and so on. So that's very interesting. That's all the those are all the creatures in the main deck or in the basic default deck. Then you have the Fires of Yavimaya, which is a classic from last year. It gives all creatures haste, and you can sacrifice the enchantment, which is interesting. And I think Wings pointed this out as well, because you have a few of these. I think you have two or one extra, yeah, one extra of these. So you have two essentially that you're able to put in your deck, and giving your huge creatures haste is significant. I think it's more significant that he made a point out of. But aside from that, it's the ability to sacrifice it and give your creatures +2/+2 makes it so that it's a combat trick, which your opponent is able to figure out, but still is a combat trick that, or your opponent is able to anticipate, but it's still a combat trick that you choose when it's happening, and then you pump one of your creatures, basically. So at one point you might have enough creatures down, you think, well, haste is not gonna be a huge difference maker at this point in the game because of certain circumstances, and plus it doesn't really help out the creatures that you have on board, but the +2/+2 until end of turn is going to help me out in this particular instance. So yeah. Rancor is another classic. It's a +2/+2 with trample, enchant, or aura in effect, and whenever it's put into the graveyard from play, not when it's on the stack, or when it's being cast, when it's about to resolve and you counter it, then it doesn't return to play or to your hand. But if it's in play and it's put into the graveyard, you return it to your hand. So that's very powerful. Plus, it's a 1 cost. And here we get to the instance, and you'll see that it's really all about pumping those huge creatures and making them even bigger. Berserk is a classic from just after I started playing Paper Magic originally back in the 90s. It was in the alpha and I think beta versions of Magic, and it's basically a until end of turn. By the way, it's an instant spell, but it cannot be cast during combat. But it's a it's a pump spell that doubles the power of your creature and gives it trample, and then you sacrifice or you destroy that creature at the end of the turn. So it's a very powerful card, and it's a very nice way of doing a lot of damage. And you'll see there's other creatures that or ways of sacrificing your creatures to do direct damage or do a lot of damage, either doing combat or outside of combat, which this deck boasts or offers in a sense. So it's a very, very cool card, and I think it was made made restricted so that you can only run one of them, or it was actually banned at some point. But I think only restricted so you can only run one of them. Not sure if it was banned. It probably was banned at some point later on. Another card which I think is really insane is the Colossal Might, kind of like the kind of like Giant Growth for 2, but much better in the sense that it costs 2, sure. Giant Growth is so great because it only costs 1 and gives your creature +3/+3, but this one gives your creature +4/+2, and it gains trample. It's just phenomenal in a sense. It's like really, really good card. You are able to run 2 of them, and you can unlock 2 more. So basically, you can just fill your deck up with a lot of these and make your opponent's life a living hell. Wildsize is a card that costs 3. It does sort of the same thing. It's a guild pack card. It pumps your creature with +2/+2 and gives a trample, plus you draw a card. So I think the card drawing deal is what makes it worthwhile, or else it's a little expensive, but still, it's just another way of combat tricking your way to an early victory with this deck. In the sideboard, I was about to say, but no, unlockables, you have a bunch of really, really strong creatures as well, and some pretty nice spells. As you'll notice, just like with the first deck pack, there's only 30 to be unlocked, and that's because there's no promo cards, at least so far. And as I've stated before, the community manager of Wizards have stated that there's currently no plans of adding any promo cards to any of the decks that are going to, that are released in the deck packs, which is a bit of a shame. I think it's a shame that when you have you have 40 extra cards and all the other, like all the default decks in the game, and the 5 decks that was released in the Ravnica expansion. I think it's a shame that you kind of shank all the 6 decks that are coming afterwards, because you make it so that there's not as many options of building these decks. But I think if they choose to at some point add 10 more promo cards for all of these 6 decks, then it's going to be great. It's going to be something that certainly gives us more options and prolong the game a little bit. So maybe that's the plan, but perhaps there's no plan of adding any promo cards whatsoever. Anyways, let's get on to it. Apocalypse Hydra is an insane card. It can be a little expensive, but it's still good. It's expensive if you want to get it, make it absolutely insane. But aside from that, it's just pretty good. It's a 2-cost plus X, and that means that if you want it to come into play as a 1-cost or a 1/1, then it costs 3. If you want it to come into play as a 2/2, then it costs 4, etc. But if you pay 5 or more when it comes into play, you double the amount of tokens or counters that you, not tokens, counters that you put on it. So if you pay 5 as X in place of X, that means that it's a 7-cost. Then it comes into play as a 10/10, and if you pay 8 or if you pay 6 plus the green and the red, then it's going to come in as a 12/12, etc. So that's pretty insane, and that's certainly worthwhile. And you have to consider whether you want to run it for the purpose of flexibility or the purpose of aiming for an insane creature, because it's going to affect the way that you play. If you're pressured, are you going to drop it as a as a creature that's nowhere near the 10/10 that it could be? Are you going to drop it when you have 5 lands down and can you're only able to make it into a 3/3? Why not then choose another creature that gives you a little bit more bang for your bucks. Anyways, it also has the additional ability of you paying 2, that is 1 colorless and 1 red, and remove 1/1/1 counter from it, and deal either 1 damage to target creature or player. Pretty neat effect. It's not the only one with this ability, but it's not the only Hydra with this ability in this deck. But it's definitely interesting. There's 2 of the Blitz Hellions, which we also saw in the Trinity of Elements deck from 2012. Also a great card. You see again the cheapness of a 7/7 trample haste, but at the end of turn you lose that creature, or you lose it as far as you're able to draw it. You shuffle it back into your library. So it's a nice way of surprising your opponent with a 7/7 trample haste, getting in there with a lot of damage, and then poof, it's gone. So there's 2 of those. Boartusk Liege is another one of the Liege creatures, a Goblin Knight for 4/3/4 with trample, and other red and green creatures get +1/+1 respectively. So that means that your dual color creatures are going to get +9/+9. Very interesting. Chameleon Colossus is another card that we know. I think it's in the... Is it in Pack Instinct or is it in... I think it might be in Ancient Wilds. It's a 4-cost changeling, which means that this creature is every creature type at all times. And it has protection for black, and you double its power and toughness by paying 4 mana, 2 green and 2 colorless. Interesting card. I guess it kind of fits with the theme a little bit, and then again maybe not so much. But it's a nice, cheap, big creature, basically. Deus of Calamity is kind of in the same realm as I think it's a Shadowmoor card, and it's kind of in the same realm as what's it called? The Overbeing of Myth and the Godhead of Awe and so on. The Demigod of Revenge, and there's a bunch of others. But it's a 6/6 with trample, and whenever Deus of Calamity deals 6 or more damage to an opponent, destroy target land that player controls. That's pretty insane right there. That's a fucking insane card. So yeah, definitely another really, really cool card to this deck. And remember, there's so many pump spells, so even if your opponent thinks, okay, I'm not gonna lose a land, and but I just need to sacrifice or chomp block with my creature, and that means that this creature has 3 toughness, so only 3 points of damage get in there, and I won't lose a land. Boom, Colossal Might, and yeah, say wave goodbye to one of your lands. Feral Animist is another interesting card. It's a 3-cost 2/1, and for 3 colorless, you double its power, and you can do this as much as you want. So if you have 9 mana, for example, you double it, and then it's 4. Next time you double it, it's 8. Next time you double it, it's 16. So that's a nice way of turning a small 2/1 weenie creature into a huge deal, basically, or a game ender. Rumbling Slum is a 4-cost 5/5. At the beginning of your upkeep, Rumbling Slum deals 1 damage to each player. That's pretty interesting as well. The color text is pretty interesting as well. The Orjov contracts the Izzet to animate slum districts and banish them to the wastes. The Gruul adopt them and send them back to the city for vengeance. It gives you a little bit of the sense of where these different guilds are in terms of function and hierarchy and so on, and which allegiances and orientation they have. Skargan Skybreaker is another insane card from the Guild Pack. I think, yeah, Rumbling Slum is from the Guild Pack as well. Skargan Skybreaker is a 7-cost giant shaman. It's a 3/3, which is pretty insignificant, but it has Bloodthirst 3, just like I think the Skargan Firebird does. So if you've dealt damage this turn, you cast this, and it becomes a 6/6. Pretty unspectacular for a 7-cost, but it does have the ability of you can sacrifice its you can sacrifice itself for 1 mana, and it deals damage equal to its power to target creature or player. So imagine if you have the Boartusk Liege down, and it comes into play as a 8/8 because you dealt damage this turn. And then after attacking next turn, you just sacrifice it and throw it directly in your opponent's face, and there's not much he can do about that, unless, of course, he has some way of dealing with this creature before it can be sacked. Spellbreaker Behemoth is a very, very nice way of dealing with blue decks and black decks, for that matter. Well, not so much. Blue decks with a lot of counter spells in them. That is the Mindstorms deck, that is the Dream Puppets, and it is Crosswinds. It can't be countered. It's a 4-cost 5/5, which is insane to begin with. It's very cheap, but at the same time, it has the secondary ability of creature spells you control with power of 5 or greater can't be countered. So that means that your huge creatures, and especially the ones that I'm not entirely sure if you have this down, does this guy and this guy, no, not this guy, does he become uncounterable? No, because while he's a spell, or while you're casting it, summoning it, it's still a 4/4, so maybe not. Okay, but it's still a good card. It's because your opponent is probably going to be sitting back and trying to deal with. Also, by the way, the Sky and Scale deck has 2 pretty interesting ways of dealing with counter spells. But anyways, yeah, this guy is going to make sure that your huge creatures enter the battlefield. So you're going to have to deal with them, or your opponent's going to have to deal with them in other ways. By destroying them, or exiling them, or bouncing them to your hand, or something like that. Stonebrow Krosan Hero is a 5-cost 4/4 with trample. Whenever a creature you control with trample attacks, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Well, how do you like that? That's simply not nice. This guy doesn't play nice with other players, but this guy is it pumps itself. So this is another way of doing cheapness and mana efficiency, because you swing in there as a 6/6, pretty insane. Ulasht the Hate Seed is another Hydra legendary creature. It's a 4-cost. And when it comes into play, you put a +1/+1 counter on it for each other red creature you control, and a +1/+1 counter for each other green creature you control. That means that this guy is going to give it 2 counters. This guy and this guy is going to give him a 1/+1/+1 counter each. This guy is going to give him 2, and so on and so forth. Insanity. Aside from that, it has something pretty similar to the Apocalypse Hydra, except that it's a bit cheaper. For 1 colorless, you can remove one of those counters and deal 1 damage to target creature, not player, or you can put a 1/1 green Saproling token into play. Also pretty nice. Ulvenwald Tracker is a creature we know from Pack Instinct. It is basically Prey Upon on a stick. It's a 1/1 for 1, and for 2 mana, and you have to tap it. You make target creature you control fight another target creature. And with such big creatures, it's easily a great way of removing your opponent's creatures. Breath of Fury, we know this from Active War, yeah, it makes a lot of sense in this deck. Actually, a lot more sense than in Active War, in my opinion, because you're going to have some huge creatures. You swing in there, and it's going to affect your opponent every time you swing in there. It's going to deal a lot of damage each time. So, sacrifice 1 creature, bounce this enchantment to the next, and you get another turn of attacking. So you attack again, and maybe your opponent's side is a little exhausted from attacking, so they have to deal with your huge creatures coming in again. So you keep attacking until you have no more creatures, or until you're not willing to attack anymore, I think. Or does it have to attack? Maybe it does. No, it doesn't have to attack. So yeah, basically pretty interesting and pretty insane. And you get 3 of them, by the way. Fires of Yavimaya, already talked about. You get 1 more. Rancor, you get 1 more. Runes of the Deus. And I think the Deus is this guy, Deus of Calamity. Runes of the Deus is like we've seen in what's it called? The Scourge of the Nobilis, basically, is a I think a Shadowmoor card. Let me just see. Runes of the Deus. Yeah. Shadowmoor card. Shadowmoor was, along with I think Shards of Alara, something like that. I'm not entirely sure. Or Eventide. Perhaps all of them actually. No, Eventide. Eventide and Shards of Alara. sorry, Eventide and Shadowmoor is kind of like, I think the Event, isn't it? Yeah, whichever is the block is kind of like Ravnica in the sense that that it dealt with color combinations, and that's why we see a lot of the Shadowmoor and Eventide cards in the Ravnica guild cards that we're getting in these decks. Or in the Ravnica decks that we're seeing in this year's Magic 2013. Anyways, it is kind of like Scourge of the Nobilis because it is also a dual-colored aura that pumps your creature in significant ways. If it's red or if it's green, respectively, it gets +1/+1. If it's red and green, that's +2/+2. But it also gives your creature double strike. That's significant. That is very, very powerful. But aside from that, it also gives it trample. So trample and double strike, yikes, fucking yikes. That's incredibly. It's just amazing. It's a very, very tough card to deal with as an aura, and it's a 5 cost, which makes it a little expensive, but still, once you get it down there, it's just going to make a huge difference, just like the Scourge of the Nobilis, or Scourge of Nobilis does for the Act of War deck. You get another Berserk, which is insane. You get 3 Branching Bolts, which is a great card. It's an instant spell for 3. Choose one or both. Branching Bolt deals 3 damage to target creature with flying and or 3 damage to target creature without flying. So that's a very, very nice way of taking care of like situations where your opponent has both flying threats and stuff on the ground that you want to get rid of. You get 2 more Colossal Might. You get 1 Fling, which is a 2-cost instant. Sacrifice a creature, Fling deals damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to target creature or player. One way of sacking, another way of sacking one of your creatures to deal direct damage. Soul Blast is another way. Again, it's a 6-cost instant, and as an additional cost to play Soul Blast, you sacrifice all the creatures you control. Soul Blast deals damage to target creature or player equal to the total power of the sacrificed creatures. How do you like that? That is a game ender right there. It's a 6-cost, but it's a 6-cost game ender. That's insane. Wildsize is, yeah, I talked about it already. You get 1 more, so you basically get 4. So that means that you have an option of running 2 Berserk, 4 Colossal Might, and 4 Wildsize. That's a lot of pump spells right there. The final card that you're able to unlock is Vengeful Rebirth. It's a 6-cost, and you can return target card from your graveyard to your hand. If you return a non-land card to your hand, this way Vengeful Rebirth deals damage equal to that card's converted mana cost to target creature or player. Remove Vengeful Rebirth from the game, so you can only use it once. Nonetheless, it is powerful as hell. If you, for example, have, let's say, this guy costs 7. Do you have something that's more expensive than that? I guess not. Wow, that's mana efficiency for you. Do you have Borborygmos is also a 7-cost. Wow, there's no more than 2? That's insane. Anyways, you lost this guy and you're kind of sad about it. So you just bounce him back to your hand and deal 7 points of damage to your opponent in the midst of it. Or you're playing against you're playing against let's see, Dream Puppets. And for some reason, Dream Puppets holds out until turn 7 and drops its what's it called? Chancellor of the Spire. Cast Vengeful Rebirth from your graveyard, and bada boom, bada bing. That's not possible. Or it wants to cast Vengeful Rebirth because it's removed from the game, so your opponent can't use it against you. Anyways, I shouldn't draw it out much longer. This is basically the Gruul deck, the Berserker Rage. It's a bit insane, I think. There's lots of neat cards, lots of incredible tricks, huge creatures and so on. It's a bit of a Timmy deck, but I guess it's a Timmy deck with some tricks to it. I'm not sure if I'm looking forward to playing against this deck. It's kind of it's gonna be the new deck that I'm kind of hating. So yeah, I don't know. Interesting or not, it'll definitely be fun to try to make a really good build. But I think the only weakness that this deck has is let me see. Yeah, just off the top of my head, the only weakness that I can see is if you can somehow take away the lands, or if you get land screwed, because there's not many ways to deal with that situation. You don't have any ramp spells. The only card ramp spells you have are the Wildsize. So yeah. Yep, but thanks for watching. This was Berserker Rage, and I'll see you in the next video. Later!